What's up everyone, welcome back to the Lace Up channel. My name's Mickey. In today's video, I'm shooting from my at-home office because it's raining like there's a monsoon outside and there's no AC at my office. So today I'm gonna take it chill, I'm gonna take it relaxed, and I'm gonna talk to you about the 5 ways that you can improve your customer service right now. So let's get right into it. So this way you're like, Mickey, I give great service to my customers. Well, Johnny, I'm sure you think you do. But over the years, I've proven that that mentality in and of itself, it's flawed. Because all of us, we think that we give the best service. We think we're gonna retain customers. But in my opinion, every single customer will leave you and will leave me. No matter what happens, at the end of the day, something will happen to their business, a decision will be made, and they will no longer depend on you as a vendor. So the objective of this video is to show you how to extend the life of a customer, how to minimize churn, minimize attrition, and maximize the customer lifetime value. So let's get into the 5 reasons. Number 1, product and service design. Now this is the most straightforward thing to think about. Your product or service must be the very best in your niche. Now, what do I mean by best? It's not just the best in that when a customer calls you, you pick up the phone and you help them. No, that in and of itself is indicative of a product or service that's not the best. From the get-go, your product or service must limit the amount of phone calls, the amount of time spent with customers, the amount of friction to get a customer across the finish line to consume your product or service. I like to think of my product or service as my number 1 support team, the team that's going to address every problem, that's going to train the customer. When you think of your product or service in that way, that means that you're going to minimize the phone calls, you're going to minimize the problems, and you're going to maximize the longevity of the customer. Let me give you an example. For me personally, it's paid tremendous dividends over time to redesign my product to make it as user-friendly as possible. Now I know you may deliver or distribute a good or service that's a consumable. You should have the most attractive packaging, things that align with the interests of people at the time, things that are going to resonate with your target market, designs that are innovative, flavors that taste good for people like me. You need to constantly be thinking about how can I evolve this to be the very best, and if you think that, I guarantee that your service will be impeccable. Point number 2, you have to play offense, not defense. Now, let me give you an example of what defense is. You do something for a customer and you wait for that customer to call you and request something or report an issue. I know most of us have been trained that if you answer that phone call, you address the customer's concern, you follow up with them, everything's going to be great. But let me blow your mind for a moment. When you play offense, when you look into the future and you design new features for your service, maybe you design new product lines for your product, eventually you have enough things to present to the customer, and they, without having to think about anything that they may want, may consume those things. And in exchange, not only do you grow your business, but you also minimize the amount of phone calls. So one way to play offense is to be innovative and produce new things, make things better all the time. But the second thing, once you actually once a customer actually has a problem, instead of letting them identify the problem, why don't you tell them what problems have been fixed? Tell them what problems you fixed, when you fixed them. Tell them how you plan to improve your supply chain, how you plan to improve your business. You could do this through email, through videos on YouTube, through whatever communication means necessary. The customer should know that the things that they're frustrated about your business are going to get resolved without them having to pick up the phone and ask you. Point number 3, response time and composure. Now, not all of us have the crystal ball where we're going to be able to design solutions to problems that don't even exist yet. Inevitably, we're going to get a phone call from a customer. I believe that if you get a phone call from a customer and you can't answer at that very moment, you have a window of about 15 minutes to call the customer back before the customer starts to panic, before the customer starts questioning why the hell they're paying you so much money and why in exchange they're having to wait to get you on the phone. I like to target my response times between 15 and 30 minutes at the worst. This means that if the customer calls, they leave a message, within 15 to 30 minutes, you're getting back with them and you're hearing them out. Now, Once they're on the phone, I can't tell you how many times I've had customers curse me out, call me names, call out my family, take things personal, right? And I've had to maintain my composure because I have to understand at that very juncture that it's not personal. Now, I know this is going to sound straightforward, but most of us have an ego, especially us business owners that have made something of our lives. We don't want to be talked down to. Well, Johnny, the fact that the customer was the person in the first place that got you to where you are today means that you should show them the level of respect that they deserve, even if they're frustrated. I always maintain my composure. Sure, I've gotten to the point on occasion that I've hung up the phone on a customer before spewing out some things that I would later regret. I would just recommend keep it chill. If you don't want to handle the customer, have one of your people handle it. Make sure that they're never offended and make sure that they keep paying you over the course of the years, because that's only going to increase the value of your business. Number 4, help the customer help themselves. Now, what do I mean? Look, a customer is always going to look for a way to help themselves before reaching out to you. That phone call that you're dreading is just as dreadful to them as it is to you. Think about that for a moment. Nobody wants to be on the phone with you or me. They want to solve their problem and move on. So when I say help them help themselves, the first thing you should have on your website is a frequently asked questions section. A section that depicts exactly what the questions are that most people ask about your product or service and what the answer is. Not just that, they should have a training manual, a manual that depicts exactly what to do, how to use your product or service, how to dispute anything that went wrong, how to reach out to you in the best way. Basically a manual that gives them a play-by-play instruction for how to address a problem on their own. Now I know, especially for businesses like mine, where my product is so segmented across so many different niches, it's hard to have that playbook all the time, but I try, at least for my larger implementations, to deploy a system where the customer can always go look up a solution to their problem and see what the steps would be, even if there is the most minute possibility that the customer will actually solve the problem. They will appreciate the fact that they had an opportunity at least to do a little research on themselves before reaching out to you. So have an FAQ, have documentation, have a training manual, but not just that. If you know what problems your product or service has, why don't you make the proactive phone call and just let the customer know? Tell them, hey, this may happen. Here's how we plan to fix it. This is when you can expect this to never happen again. I've done this so many times. I've proactively called a customer and said, hey, I have another customer with this issue. If you do this, you will experience it. The solution is coming in 2 weeks, and I'll call you the moment that it's out. That is how you give the customer the best service. Help them help themselves. Point number 5, and something that's just going to sound so rudimentary, especially to those of you that are seasoned in business, that have been doing this for a very long time: follow up. Follow up. 2 simple words that will drastically transform your business. There's 2 forms of follow-up. The first one is during the initial phone call. The customer is going to report the problem to you. They're going to tell you everything that's wrong. At that moment, things are going to get tense. Things are going to get heated. But the moment you hang up the phone, you better be following up with the customer on a daily basis until their issue is resolved. Now, I'm not saying that all of you do some kind of software company like I do, but those of you that have a distribution company, if a customer complains about a product, you need to be following up with them, giving them insight, telling them when this thing will be fixed. As long as they're updated, most customers don't care if things take a week or 2 weeks to resolve. The moment you go dark, the moment you disappear is the moment the customer will get super frustrated. So follow up the moment, the next day after the customer's reported an issue, with a timeline, with a time frame, with your plan of action to get it fixed. Secondly, once the issue is resolved, here's where the kicker lies. Most of you probably do great follow-up during an issue, but after the issue is done, you assume that the customer is good. You can never assume that a customer is fucking good. You always have to assume that the customer has a problem, which means that in perpetuity you have to reach out to the customer, calling them, asking them how things are going, asking them if there's anything you could improve. If you could snap a finger and make your product or service the best thing in the world, what would they want? These are the questions and conversations that need to have and need to permeate through your organizations, because if they don't, if you don't have these conversations, I can promise you, as I alluded to in the beginning of this video, the customers will leave you. It doesn't matter what the cause of the breakup is. It could be an issue of bankruptcy, someone dying. Inevitably they're gone, and your responsibility is to maximize the relationship and the time frame of that relationship so you can generate something called customer lifetime value. You must always follow up with customers in perpetuity throughout the entire duration of your relationship. I like to tell my sales reps and my account managers to follow up with the customer at least once a month, just to see what's up, just to see what we can improve, just to see what their preferences are. And I can tell you all the time, we find examples of people that are thinking about switching, people that are thinking about leaving. We're able to identify the cause for that desired action, fix it, and keep the customer long term. So in conclusion, those are the 5 tips that I've used my entire life, at least in this business, to maximize my customer lifetime value. I can tell you, my churn is 19% every 5 years. So do that math. If you divide 19% by 5, that's 3.89% of my customers get churned every year. That's not very much because I'm gaining 20% a year. So if I'm gaining 20% and only losing 3, I have a net growth in my business of 17% per year. Now I wish I could get my churn even lower, but my churn tends to come from customers that I closed in the first place that may have not been the best fit. Again, if there isn't exact product market fit, if your product's not ideal, if it's not solving a large enough problem for them, if it's too complex to use for them, they will leave you inevitably. So I hope that video helped. I hope I didn't digress too much, and more than anything, I hope you enjoyed the new studio. If you did, go down below, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next video. Take care.